Is there any evidence of the Christian faith outside of the Bible?
Sure, there's a boatload of evidence. The early church fathers, writing from about 100 AD to 400 AD, talk about the impact of Christ on their lives.
So the question that this young man had asked is there external evidence for the existence of Jesus? And the answer that this guy gives is the most internal evidence you could possibly imagine. It is in no way, shape, or form external. He is saying the church fathers, the most internal aspect imaginable, gave accounts of Jesus. This is like saying that there's a hypothetical unicorn cult, that they imagine that there's an all-power, omnipresent unicorn named Javier. And in questioning the existence of this all-powerful unicorn Javier, somebody says, is there any external evidence? And they say, well, the founders of the cult wrote about the all-powerful unicorn Javier, so that counts as evidence. That's not external evidence at all.
Josephus, the Jewish historian who was no follower of Christ, wrote about Jesus as an historical person.
Now the issue with this is Josephus was a great writer. He was a significant historical figure himself, but was he an accurate historian? Absolutely not. Most historians scoff at the idea of taking Josephus's work as accurate history. Most scholars refuse to accept Josephus's work as actual history. It is littered with contradictions. He shows extreme biases, and he uses external accounts, fifth and sixth person accounts. So it's practically hearsay for a lot of it. And what aspects that are true and were historically validated, he always put a little bit of a dramatized flair to things. He always fictionalized it to a degree to make it a little bit more entertaining. So he was more of an entertainer than he was an actual historian. Now then, the second problem with Josephus is the fact that he was extremely biased, as we just mentioned, but so politically biased that what we have to do when considering a lot of his work is consider it as propaganda. And using anything as propaganda for evidence of something is futile in and of itself. The third problem with taking Josephus' account as historical evidence for Jesus is the fact that Josephus did not actually believe that Jesus was the Son of God and the Messiah, because he was a Jewish historian, an Orthodox Jew, and the Jews, of course, do not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. Instead, he believed that the Roman Emperor Vespasian was the Messiah. In order for Jesus to be the Messiah, in Josephus's point of view, was that he had to be the ruler of the world, and Jesus was not the ruler of the world. In order for somebody to be the ruler of the world, in Josephus's point of view, they had to be the ruler of the Roman Empire, which is exactly why he thought Vespasian was the Messiah, not Jesus. The fourth issue with taking Josephus's word as authentic evidence for Jesus is the fact that he was writing the 18th book of the Jewish Wars, where he mentions Jesus, 93 to 94 AD. In other words, a century after the supposed life of Jesus. So in other words, this is not a first-hand eyewitness account. This is, again, hearsay. It's saying what other people have given an account for. It's saying what other people believe, not necessarily what Josephus has given account for, not what he believes, not what he has seen. It is hearsay. Now, the fifth problem with Josephus's account is the fact that in the 18th book, where he mentions Jesus, there is clear signs, very obvious evidence that the writing has been tampered with. And it seems to be tampered with to increase the Christianized dogma. The very first issue that I had in reading this is the fact that it represents a dogma that did not exist in mass in 93 to 94 AD. The dogma that Josephus is writing about really didn't become a concrete Christian dogma until around 300 BC, which is oddly enough where we see the transcriptions of Josephus's work coming from. This wouldn't be the first time that Christians tampered with various writings to propagate their own initiatives and their own biases. And it is only through Christian transcribers that we are able to have the work of Josephus. We don't have any original works of Josephus. It's all Christian transcriptions. So there's clear evidence that it's been tampered with. There's strong contradictions, and therefore we can't take this as valid evidence that Josephus actually said this about Jesus in the first place.
Marabara Serapion, a Syrian philosopher, wrote a letter to his son in sometime after 73 AD, in which he talks about the crucifixion of Christ.
So Marabar did write a letter to his son, and it could be interpreted that he is talking about Jesus. He's talking about 3 wise teachers which were wrongfully murdered. Yet there's a lot of people that doubt that he was actually talking about Jesus because, first of all, he does not mention Jesus by name. He simply says a wise Jewish king. Now, the Jews did not believe that Jesus was actually a king of theirs. He was not historically a king, and the pagans certainly could care less if he was a king or not, let alone did they believe that he was actually a king. And Marlborough was not talking about Jesus as if he believed in Jesus. He was talking about Jesus from a pagan perspective. So he himself didn't actually believe that Jesus was a king of the Jews. So when he says a wise Jewish king was killed, a lot of people have serious doubts, myself included, that he was referring to Jesus the Christ or Jesus of Nazareth. But still yet another problem with this is that it was written at the very earliest around 73 AD, but could have been written as late as 300 AD, and again might have some tamperings of Christian transcriptions. However, what he is saying is that there are followers of this wise Jewish king who the wise Jewish king lives on through. So he's not saying anything about the actual person. He's not giving any historic evidence, and he's certainly not giving an eyewitness account of this wise Jewish king. He's just simply saying that there is a group of people who believe in this wise Jewish king. He is saying that there are Christians that existed, if he is even referring to Jesus, not that Jesus existed. And in no way, shape, or form is he giving credentials that he believes in Jesus in any way, shape, or form. But even at this point, we would see that by 73 AD, Jesus would have already had enough time to become mythologized at this point. Therefore, this is all again hearsay, not an eyewitness account.
Pliny the Younger, the Roman governor, writes about Jesus and the Christ followers who trusted in.
And again, here we're seeing Pliny the Younger not talking about Jesus. He's not saying that he witnessed Jesus walking on the earth or that he witnessed any of these miracles. He's saying that there are people that believe that there was a Jesus that walked the earth and performed miracles. And nobody ever denied that Christians exist or that there's a history of Christians. No one has a conspiracy theory like that conjured up yet. What they are saying and throwing into doubt is if Jesus was a real person. And so far, all this guy was able to give evidence for is that there were various writers that attested to the reality of Christians, of people who believed in Jesus, not the validity of Jesus. And furthermore, when it comes to Pliny the Younger, he is very critical of the Christians, scoffing at them, belittling them, and even making comic reliefs about them. So I would not consider this, if I were a Christian, as good evidence, and it wouldn't be something I would drag into an argument by any means, shape, or form.
The Babylonian Talmud, which is very hostile in its references to Jesus as a false prophet, obviously talks about him as a historical person, and a fair amount of scorn and derision is heaped on Christ for his claims. So there are many different references from many different types of people about Jesus being a real historical person.
So in short, he was unable to give any actual external evidence for the existence of Jesus. Everything that he mentioned was just evidence for people who believed in the existence of Jesus, not actual eyewitness accounts of Jesus himself. And if these are the credentials that we're working with to verify deities, then any god of the ancient world is subject to the same validity, so to speak. Odin was written about by various non-Nordic pagans. Cernunnos of the Celtic mythology was written about by various non-Celtic people. So does this give them validity? Does this make them real? Does this open them up to the possibility and give them merit of existence? Christians would say no, so why would we consider this evidence verifiable to the existence of Jesus? A little bit hypocritical here.